The boardroom on the 42nd floor of Sterling Dynamics was a temple of glass and ambition. Sunlight glared through tall windows, bouncing off chrome surfaces and cold marble floors. The air hummed with anxiety and the faint scent of burnt coffee. $100 million were on the line, and one wrong word could ruin everything. The woman at the center of it all, Victoria Hayes, stood tall in her navy suit, her platinum hair coiled neatly at her neck. Her voice, sharp as cut crystal, sliced through the room. "This is a disaster," she hissed, tossing the tablet on the table. "Our translator canceled 15 minutes before the meeting, and the Shanghai investors are already in the lobby." Executives exchanged nervous glances. No one dared to meet her eyes. Across the room, Daniel Reed was mopping the edge of the conference floor. He wore gray coveralls with a faint stain on one knee and wireless earbuds half hidden under his curls. To everyone else, he was background noise, the janitor who moved like he wished he were invisible. But he wasn't just listening to the executives' panic. He was translating the Mandarin messages pinging on Victoria's phone in real time. Under his breath, "They're already doubting your company's integrity," he murmured softly to himself. "They think you'll try to cheat them." Victoria's voice cut sharper. "Does no one here have a single idea? Are we about to lose this deal because of incompetence?" A young assistant stammered. "Ma'am, I tried." "Tried isn't good enough, Emily." Daniel exhaled slowly, leaned his mop against the wall, and hesitated. He'd promised himself he'd never draw attention again. Not after what happened at his last job. Not after how easily people dismissed him because of how he looked, how he spoke. But the panic in the room stirred something in him, that old part that hated watching powerful people crumble under arrogance and pride. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said quietly. The sound stopped everything. Heads turned toward him like he'd spoken from another planet. Victoria frowned. "What are you doing in here? This is a private meeting." "I'm sorry, ma'am," Daniel said evenly, "but I speak Mandarin. If you'd like, I can translate for you until your interpreter arrives." The silence was sharp enough to cut glass. Then laughter. One of the executives, a man with slick hair and a tie that screamed superiority, smirked. "You? The janitor?" Victoria crossed her arms. "You're telling me our custodian can speak Mandarin?" Daniel met her gaze calmly. "Yes, ma'am." The disbelief was suffocating. A few people chuckled quietly. Someone muttered something about wannabe heroes. Victoria Said. "This isn't the time for jokes, Mr. Reed." Daniel Reed. Madame Luo clasped Daniel's hand warmly. "You have an impressive grasp of our language, Mr. Reed. Are you sure you are not in management here?" Daniel smiled faintly. "No, ma'am. I just work maintenance." The investors exchanged surprised looks before thanking him again and exiting. As soon as the doors closed, Victoria's polished smile disappeared. "Who authorized you to speak during a board meeting?" she snapped. "Do you have any idea what you just risked?" Daniel blinked. "Risked? I just saved your deal." Her voice hardened. "You interrupted a multi-million-dollar negotiation. If you had mistranslated anything, we could have lost everything." He looked at her evenly. "You would have lost it anyway." Her lips parted in shock. Around them, the executives looked from one to the other, afraid to move. "What did you just say to me?" "I said," Daniel replied calmly, "you were about to lose it anyway, because you treat people like they don't matter. That doesn't work in business or in life." The room was silent. For a moment, Victoria seemed speechless. Then she laughed quietly, that cold, managerial laugh. "You're fired." Daniel tilted his head. "You're serious? Get your things and leave the building. Security will escort you out." He studied her face. the steel behind her smugness, and nodded slowly. "All right, ma'am, but you might want to check your messages before you do that." Victoria frowned, pulling out her phone. There were new notifications, an email thread forwarded to her by one of the investors. Her eyes scanned it, and her expression changed. Color drained from her face. The email was from Madame Luo herself. "Your employee, Mr. Daniel Reed, displayed remarkable professionalism and skill. His translation clarified complex terms your team misunderstood. We'd like to recommend him for the international cultural liaison role we discussed." Victoria's throat went dry. What role?" she muttered. But Daniel was already gone. That night, the story didn't leave her mind. She tried to dismiss it, but her inbox flooded with messages. From investors, clients, even upper management, all praising Daniel's composure. And then came the twist she didn't see coming. At 9 p.m., her phone rang. It was Mr. Callahan, the CEO of Sterling Dynamics. "Victoria," he said, voice low. "I just got off the phone with the Shanghai team. They've requested that Mr. Reed lead the next phase of negotiations." "Who is he?" Victoria swallowed. He was our janitor." "Was? I fired him." A long silence. Then the CEO spoke slowly, dangerously calm. "Reinstate him. Immediately. In fact, bring him in tomorrow. I want him in my office at 8 a.m. The next morning, Daniel walked into Sterling Dynamics wearing a simple black suit. Gone were the gray coveralls and the mop bucket. He moved with quiet confidence, the kind that unnerved those who used to look down on him. As he entered the lobby, whispers followed. The janitor had returned, but something about his demeanor said this wasn't the same man they dismissed. Victoria was waiting outside the CEO's office, her smile stretched too tight. "Mr. Reed," she began, "I want to apologize for yesterday." He held up a hand. "You don't have to." "No, I insist. I was under a lot of stress, and I may have—" "Ms. Hayes," he said evenly. "You didn't may have. You did." Her smile faltered. Before she could reply, the CEO's assistant opened the door. "Mr. Callahan will see you now." Daniel entered. The office was vast, lined with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Mr. Callahan stood behind his desk, hands clasped. "Daniel Reed," he said, "you've caused quite a stir." Daniel smiled faintly. "Not intentionally, sir." "Good, because you're about to cause another one." He gestured toward a folder on his desk. "Madame Luo has formally requested that you act as our lead liaison for the Shanghai expansion. Effective immediately." Daniel blinked. "Sir, I will handle your visa arrangements, housing, and compensation. It's a big responsibility. Are you interested?" Daniel hesitated only a second before nodding. "Yes, sir." "Good. Then welcome to management, Mr. Reed." Outside the office, Victoria waited, pretending to review her tablet. When Daniel stepped out, she forced a smile. "Congratulations," she said, her voice sugar-coated. "Looks like you got yourself a promotion." Daniel nodded. "Funny how quickly things change, isn't it?" Her eyes narrowed slightly. "Enjoy it while it lasts." He gave her a polite smile. "Oh, I intend to." The next weeks at Sterling Dynamics were a study in quiet disbelief. Daniel's name appeared on internal memos now, not under maintenance, but under international relations. His badge color changed, his schedule filled with conference calls. The same people who once asked him to empty the bins now nodded politely when they passed him in the hallway. But the looks behind their smiles said something else. How long can this last? Victoria Hayes watched it all from her glass office, the skyline glittering behind her like a crown she refused to surrender. Every time she saw Daniel walking toward the elevator with his tablet and files, something inside her burned. A janitor? A liaison? She'd spent 15 years clawing to reach her position, and he'd jumped the line in one meeting. That jealousy began to ferment into something sharper. It started small. A misplaced document here, a forgotten email thread there. Then came the gossip. He only got that job because of the investors. He's an activist quota hire. He probably recorded the meeting. Daniel ignored it at first. He'd learned long ago that silence unsettled people more than argument. He focused on the project, a renewable energy partnership that could transform Sterling's reputation overseas. What no one knew was that Daniel had a second reason for taking the role. He'd worked night shifts long enough to notice what others missed. Strange shipments logged at 3 a.m., inventory numbers that didn't add up, closed-door deliveries labeled as equipment returns. When he mopped floors near accounting, he'd overheard names and transactions that didn't make sense. He suspected Victoria's department was moving company funds through shell suppliers. Small thefts that added up to millions. Now he finally had the access to prove it. Late one night, Daniel sat alone in the darkened boardroom, city lights shimmering across the table's surface like liquid fire. His laptop screen glowed faintly. Spreadsheets, internal transfers, fake vendor accounts. Every line confirmed what he'd suspected. A quiet voice came from behind him. "You're not the only one who's noticed." He turned. Emily, the same young assistant Victoria had humiliated weeks earlier, stepped out from the shadows. Her face was pale, eyes darting to the hallway. "She's been laundering money through the overseas contracts," Emily whispered. "She makes it look like marketing expenses. I've tried to report it, but the compliance officer is her cousin." Daniel studied her. "Why tell me?" "Because you actually have the investors' trust. They listen to you, and because—" She hesitated. "Because I'm tired of being scared." He closed his laptop. "Then we'll make sure the right people see the truth." A week later, Sterling Dynamics hosted a gala at the downtown Hilton, the kind of event designed to showcase morality through champagne. Victoria glided through the crowd like royalty, her diamond earrings flashing beneath the chandeliers. Daniel arrived late, dressed in a tailored charcoal suit that looked almost too natural on him. He greeted investors in both English and Mandarin, his composure infuriating Victoria. "Enjoying the spotlight?" she said coolly when they crossed paths. "Just doing my job," he replied. "Don't get too comfortable. Not everyone here believes in fairy tale promotions." He smiled slightly. "Neither do I." At 9 p.m., the CEO called Victoria and Daniel to the stage for a presentation on their joint progress. Cameras flashed. A giant screen behind them displayed slides Daniel had prepared. But as Victoria began to speak, the images changed. Account statements, fake vendor lists, signatures, hers. Gasps rippled through the ballroom. Victoria froze. What is this?" Daniel didn't speak. He turned to the CEO. "Sir, those documents were taken directly from the company's secure drive. I believe they explain some of the budget discrepancies we discussed." The CEO's jaw clenched. "Ms. Hayes, my office. Now." Security escorted her away amid a storm of whispers and camera flashes. Daniel stepped off the stage, heart hammering. He'd timed everything perfectly, forwarding the files to the board moments before the presentation. The evidence was airtight, but revenge, he realized, didn't feel like victory. Not yet. By Monday morning, Victoria's office was sealed for audit. News spread fast. She'd been suspended pending federal investigation. The board praised Daniel for his integrity and diligence. Headlines painted him as a symbol of fairness in corporate America. From janitor to executive, the man who exposed corporate corruption. Yet Daniel stayed quiet. He declined interviews, avoided praise. Fame was never his goal. What mattered was restoring dignity. His, Emily's, everyone who'd been invisible under glass ceilings. Still, Victoria's shadow lingered. She wasn't finished. 2 weeks later, she appeared on a business news channel. Perfect hair, perfect lighting, tears glistening on command. "I was framed," she told the host. "That young man hacked company systems. He's dangerous." Her words spread online like oil on water. Within days, Daniel's inbox filled with hate messages. Someone leaked his old arrest record, a mistaken identity case from years ago that had been dismissed. Anonymous comments accused him of lying about his education, about everything. The company's PR team panicked. The CEO ordered an internal review. For a moment, it looked like the tide might turn. Then Emily stepped forward again, this time publicly. She released the recording Daniel had secretly made the night he discovered the evidence. Victoria bragging to a colleague about creative accounting. The internet reversed course instantly. Sympathy swung back to Daniel. Victoria's lies collapsed under the weight of her own voice. Months passed. Sterling Dynamics rebuilt. Daniel took charge of ethical training and cross-cultural partnerships. Emily became compliance officer. The Shanghai investors funded a scholarship in Daniel's name for underrepresented students pursuing international business. On his last night before flying to China to oversee the new branch, Daniel stood again in that same boardroom. Mop replaced by briefcase. The skyline looked different now, but the smell of burnt coffee still lingered. He remembered the first day he dared to speak up, how laughter had filled the room. Now the silence felt earned, peaceful. The door opened softly. Victoria stepped in, escorted by security to collect her belongings. Her power was gone, but her pride remained. "Congratulations," she said, voice hollow. "You got everything you wanted." Daniel shook his head. "No, just what was fair." "You think you're a hero?" He looked at her, weary but calm. "No, just a man who stopped cleaning up after other people's messes." She tried to reply, but words failed her. Security gestured toward the hallway. She left without another glance. Daniel turned back to the window. The city stretched before him, raw, electric, full of unfinished stories. Somewhere out there, another person was being overlooked, another voice dismissed. He smiled faintly. 6 months later, the morning sun rose over Shanghai's skyline, golden light spilling through the glass facade of the new Sterling Dynamics Asia headquarters. Daniel Roberts, once invisible, once underestimated, stood before the tall windows, his reflection merging with the city below. The energy of the streets pulsed like veins of ambition. Scooters weaving between cars, vendors shouting, neon signs flashing. It reminded him of the nights back in New York when he used to mop the executive floors, dreaming of distant horizons he might never see. Now he was here, not as a visitor, but as the company's new regional director of international development. He had spent the last half-year rebuilding Sterling's image in Asia, negotiating with partners once skeptical of American corporations after Victoria's scandal. Under his guidance, Sterling had doubled its investment portfolio and opened 2 renewable energy plants across Southeast Asia. But success, Daniel had learned, was never silent for long. It attracted noise, attention, envy, and new enemies. It began on a quiet Monday morning. Daniel's assistant Mei Lin entered his office, worry etched on her usually calm face. "Sir, the auditors from Washington arrived early. They say it's a random compliance review." Daniel frowned. "Random? We just had one last quarter. They're requesting all correspondence between our Shanghai branch and the U.S. office," she said, "including your personal logs." He paused. A chill crept up his spine. Who authorized it? They claim it came directly from the board, but they wouldn't say which member. Daniel knew immediately. Victoria Hayes might have lost her position, but she hadn't lost her connections. Somewhere she was pulling strings. Still, he smiled faintly. Let them look, he said. I don't hide anything. He didn't, but someone else did. That night, Daniel stayed in the office after everyone left. The city glowed below like an ocean of stars. He scrolled through encrypted files on the company's internal system, checking for anomalies. At 2:14 a.m., he found one. A hidden data folder labeled Archive H02, accessed remotely from New York just 2 days earlier. Inside were old emails, some altered, others replaced with fabrications, messages that could make it appear he'd mishandled confidential information. Someone was trying to plant evidence of corporate espionage. He stared at the screen, pulse quickening. If that information reached Washington, his entire career, everything he'd rebuilt, could vanish overnight. A notification blinked on the corner of his monitor. Incoming secure call. He clicked. The face on screen was familiar Victoria Hayes. Her expression was calm, almost smug. You didn't think I'd stay down forever, did you? Daniel leaned back in his chair. I wondered when you'd crawl out. Enjoy your victory while it lasts. You humiliated me in front of the world, and I've spent every day since making sure you'll know what that feels like. He folded his arms. You're sabotaging the company to get to me? No, she said coldly. I'm saving it from people like you who don't belong in those boardrooms. You think you earned your seat, but you were a symbol, nothing more. A story they could sell. Her words cut deep, but Daniel refused to show it. You're wrong, he said quietly. They didn't give me that seat. I took it, by working for it while you were busy stepping on everyone else. We'll see who's still standing when the truth comes out, she said, and the call ended. The screen went black, but Daniel wasn't shaken, he was calculating. 3. The counterplan. By dawn, he was on a secure call with Emily, now Sterling's compliance officer in New York. She's trying to frame you, Emily said. The falsified emails were uploaded through an old account she created while she was VP. Can we trace it? Not directly. But if we can prove those entries came from her login ID, it'll clear your name and end her for good. Then let's do it, Daniel said. But we do it clean. No leaks, no noise. Over the next week, they worked secretly across continents. Emily coordinated with cybersecurity experts while Daniel maintained a facade of calm professionalism, attending meetings, entertaining investors, acting as though nothing was wrong. But every night, he and Emily pieced together the digital trail, timestamps, VPN logs, metadata. Slowly, a pattern emerged. The falsified entries came from a remote IP address registered to an old client in Delaware, a shell company once owned by Victoria's brother-in-law. They had her. 3 weeks later, Daniel flew back to New York for the emergency board meeting Victoria had demanded, claiming gross misconduct in the Shanghai division. As he entered the Sterling Tower again, the same building where he'd once pushed a janitor's cart, he felt the weight of his journey press against him. But he walked tall now, his navy suit fitting perfectly, confidence radiating like armor. Inside the boardroom, the tension was palpable. Victoria sat at the far end, poised and smiling faintly, as though she already knew the outcome. Mr. Roberts, the chairman began, Ms. Hayes has presented evidence suggesting that you've leaked proprietary data to foreign competitors. Before we proceed, would you like to respond? Daniel rose slowly, setting a sleek black drive on the table. Yes, sir, he said. By all means. He connected the drive to the projector. On screen appeared 2 columns of data, one labeled falsified files, the other originals. The emails Ms. Hayes provided were fabricated, he said, his tone controlled but deadly precise. Our cybersecurity team traced their creation to a remote Delaware address associated with a company named Astravine Solutions. Records show that Astravine was registered by Ms. Hayes' relative, Douglas Hayes, 3 years ago. Gasps filled the room. To confirm, Daniel continued, the falsified data was uploaded using Ms. Hayes' old executive login credentials. The timestamps match her activity on 3 specific nights, including the evening she accused me on live television. Victoria's calm cracked. You can't prove I. Daniel clicked once more. A recording played Victoria's voice, from the recent call she'd made to threaten him. You humiliated me in front of the world, and I've spent every day since making sure you'll know what that feels like. The room went silent. The chairman turned toward her, eyes heavy with disappointment. Ms. Hayes, he said, voice grim, you not only compromised our data systems, you attempted to destroy the reputation of the very man who saved this company. Security entered quietly. You're finished, the chairman added. Permanently. Victoria stood, trembling. This is revenge, she hissed at Daniel. He shook his head. No. This is justice. You wrote your own ending. I just read it aloud. She glared at him for a long, trembling second, then was escorted out. The sound of the closing door felt like a chapter slamming shut. After the meeting, Daniel stepped out onto the terrace overlooking Manhattan. The city was alive, indifferent, endless. Emily joined him, handing him a coffee. You did it, she said softly. He smiled. We did it. Now maybe the right stories will finally be heard. What will you do next? He looked out at the skyline, the same one that once made him feel small. Build something bigger, a place where no one gets ignored because of where they started. He wasn't speaking about Sterling anymore. He had a vision. An independent consulting firm dedicated to training overlooked talent, janitors, assistants, clerks, in corporate literacy and negotiation. People like he once was. A year later, that vision became reality. Roberts Global Consulting opened its first branch in Chicago, funded partly by Sterling Dynamics and the Asian investors who never forgot what Daniel had done. The company specialized in cross-cultural negotiation and ethical business reform. On opening day, Daniel's mother, retired now, healthier and glowing with pride, cut the ceremonial ribbon. You always told me patience was power, he said to her quietly. And you listened, she replied. That's why you're here. Inside the office, framed on the wall, hung a simple photograph. The old Sterling janitor's cart, polished and empty, standing beside a window overlooking the city. Beneath it, a plaque read, To those the world overlooks, your silence is not weakness, it's preparation. Business magazines called him the quiet revolutionary. Universities invited him to lecture on ethical leadership. Sterling Dynamics profits tripled under his global strategies. And Victoria Hayes? She disappeared from corporate circles after her conviction for corporate fraud. Last anyone heard, she was teaching business ethics at a small community college under a different name. Irony Daniel chose never to comment on. One winter afternoon, Daniel received a letter with no return address. Inside, a single sentence written in elegant handwriting. Sometimes failure is the only teacher left to listen to. Thank you. He didn't need a signature. He folded the note carefully and placed it beside the framed plaque on his desk. Then he looked out the window, snow falling softly over Chicago, and smiled. He had learned the secret no textbook ever taught, that the people everyone overlooks are the ones who learn to see everything. And when they finally rise, they don't just change their own lives. They change the system that once ignored them.